Hey guys, and welcome to another very exciting visual effects tutorial. In this video I want to show you how to create a really cool looking Hadouken effect from Street Fighter using Adobe After Effects and the RTFX Generator. The RTFX Generator, written RTFX, is an asset pack containing over 800 really cool looking hand-drawn FX animations for fire, smoke, explosions, spark, energy, electricity, title reveals, lower thirds, animated backgrounds and much more. The pack also contains 200 sound effects, bringing the total number of elements up to 1,000. A regular license will set you back $69 on videohive.net, and here I have to give a huge shout out to the RTFX team that creates this cool asset pack for giving me a free license to try and to use, and giving me 5 licenses that I can give away to all of you. Also, because VideoHive is part of the Envato market, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to Envato for sponsoring this video. If you're ever in need of royalty-free video templates or really cool looking stock footage assets, be sure to check out videohive.net. But now, let's talk about how you can win yourself one of the 5 licenses to the RTFX Generator that I am allowed to give away. All you have to do is make sure you subscribe to the channel and then leave a comment down below explaining what type of visual effects you want to create with the assets from this pack. In a week's time, I'm going to randomly pick 5 winners and contact them on YouTube, so be sure to check your messages, otherwise I might simply pass the prize down to the next one in line. Also, do note that this is an intermediate level difficulty tutorial, so I will assume that you are quite comfortable using Adobe After Effects. If you're just getting started, be sure to check out my beginner tutorials first. I'm going to link you those down below. But now, with all of the formalities out of the way, let's jump right into the tutorial. Welcome to the exciting world of Adobe After Effects. I have a brand new project set up here, but as always, I've already imported the clips that we will be using to create this effect, one called tobiashit.mp4 and one called walterhadouken.mp4. And as always, if you do want to follow along with this tutorial, you'll be able to download these clips from my website, and the link to that I'll drop you down in the video description. Let's get started and grab the walterhadouken.mp4 clip and drag it onto the new composition icon to create a new composition. And if you scrub through this clip, this is just a clip from the intro of this tutorial of Walter getting angry and throwing a Hadouken in my face and then just walking out. But obviously I'm not in the shot, and for that we need the second clip, we need the tobiashit.mp4. So let's drag that into the composition and drop it right at the top. This is the clip of me trying to sneak up on Walter, getting caught out and then getting a Hadouken in my face. Obviously now you can't see Walter anymore, so let's zoom out with the Tobias Hit layer selected. Grab the rectangular mask tool and let's just draw a mask over the right side. This is just a basic cloning effect, so both me and Walter are in the shot. And don't worry, we'll be cleaning this up in a little bit, so don't worry that you can kind of see the line between those two. Now, these two are already lined up in terms of timing. If you're filming your own clip, obviously you have to make sure that these align time-wise, otherwise this won't really work. So now, we need to add the actual Hadouken effect, both the energy around Walter's hand and the fireball itself, as well as then the explosion effect where I disintegrate. For that, we're going to use the assets from the RTFX Generator. Once you've installed the RTFX Generator, you can come up into Window, Extensions, and you'll find it right here, RTFX or RTFX. So let's enable that. This is going to load up the RTFX panel. You can see it right here. And in here, you will find a humongous amount of really cool hand-drawn effects for all sorts of explosions, energy effects, lightning, fire, full screen transitions, title reveals. It's packed with a lot of really cool stuff. They look really nice. They look really sleek, all very anime style, very energetic and really well done. Tons of stuff in here. I'm not going to go through all of this. Instead, let's add the elements we need to actually create this effect. So let's come to the point where Walter is casting that energy ball. So right about here is when I want the effect to start appearing. And now I can kind of dig through this if I wanted to, but I'm actually going to come into the effects element and everything is nicely categorized. Come down a little bit. You can go through the energy category, and as always, while you're following along, I encourage you to play around, use different effects and try different things. That's kind of how you learn the best. But I'm actually going to come into the electricity category because I know that in here, you see this effect would work quite well, but I actually kind of like this one here, the electricity 036 explosion ride mix, no CT, no RSZ. It's a bit of a mouthful. But all you need to do in order to add this element into your composition at the current time position is simply to double click it. This is going to load the element into our project. I'm not sure why I placed it at the very beginning. Let's actually just come back to where Walter is shooting right here, and let's just drag this element forward. And this now is this really cool anime style fireball casting effect. I'm really liking this. I'm just going to scale it down a little bit, and I'm holding down Shift to scale down uniformly. Without Shift, you can kind of squish and squeeze your layer. So undo that, and let's just scale this down so it kind of fits size-wise right over Walter's hands. I'm also going to change the blend mode of my layer. Press F4 if you can't see your layer switches. Change the mode from normal. Let's just change it over to screen. Move it forward just a little bit, so maybe right about here looks good. Let's just come back. Oh, starting a little bit too early. Let's just move it forward a little. Yeah, looks good, but I'm just going to move it forward a little. And again, feel free to tweak this to your liking. So this kind of looks cool. So there, yeah, nice, cool. That looks really good. And let's add the fireball, and that's just as easy. So let's come to the time where we want the fireball to appear, maybe right about here, when that energy field is the biggest. And I already know which one I want. You can find that in the energy category of the RTFX pack. Let me just come down a little bit and try to find it. And yeah, that one. I really like this energy ball. Kind of looks really cool. So again, let's just double click to add this into our project. And there you go. Not sure why it didn't work the first time. This time it actually added it at the right time. So there's our energy ball. Starting a little bit early. I kind of want it appearing right there. So Alt and mouse wheel up to zoom in. It's going to move this layer over a little bit. And again, the energy ball is just a little bit too big. So I'm just going to make this a bit smaller. Move it over to the left-hand side. This is where I want it to start appearing. And again, let's change the blend mode from normal over to screen. So that's where the fireball is going to appear. Obviously, we kind of want it moving. It's a bit static right now. So let's come to the beginning with the fireball layer selected. And I'm actually going to rename this one because it's going to get a bit hard otherwise to identify the elements. So let's call this layer Hadouken. I'm actually going to rename the one below that as well to Walter Blast. With the Hadouken layer selected, press P to reveal the position. Click on the stopwatch icon to enable keyframes for this property. Let's come forward 5 frames. I'm pressing page down to move 5 frames forward. Let's grab the layer, and I'm just going to move it over to the right-hand side. By the way, I'm holding down Shift so I can move the layer perfectly on a horizontal line. I'll just move this past me, and you'll see in a moment that's just for the motion blur. So now we have the energy ball shooting at my stomach, and that's kind of where I want to kind of disappear. And maybe I will have it go till that point. So I'm going to Alt and right square bracket, or Option and right square bracket if you're on a Mac. Energy ball disappears there. But now let's also add some motion blur to this to make it look a little bit more energetic. Right now I can't see the motion blur switches, so press F4 to reveal that. Then this one here is the motion blur on the layer, and it's already enabled on my composition. If this switch isn't enabled, make sure you tick that. And while we've added motion blur, it's a little bit too much. It's a bit too blurry for me, and we can actually control that for the entire composition by changing the shutter angle. For that, simply right-click somewhere into an empty space in your layers window and come to the composition settings. I'm going to bring this over to the left side so you can see what's happening. Come into the advanced tab, and down here you'll find options for motion blur. For example, the shutter angle. Now the shutter angle controls your frame rate to shutter speed ratio. And if you lower this, you're going to get less motion blur. So let's try 90 degrees. And you can see there's a bit less motion blur. Maybe I'll also lower it a little bit more, 60. And again, you can tweak this to taste. You can also add fake motion blur if you really wanted to, but I'm actually quite happy with that. Let's just rewind a little bit and play that snippet back. Cool, that's looking pretty good. So now we need to add the actual explosion to, well, make it look a little bit more energetic as I'm getting hit by that Hadouken. Now the RTFX Generator includes a full category for explosions, and these all actually look really cool. They're really smoky, fiery explosions. You can use one of those if you want to and, color grade it or tweak it. They all come with settings that you can change as well. I'm kind of liking this one here, this energy smoky effect. So let's come to the point where the Hadouken hits me right there. That's where I want to add the explosion. And let's simply double click the element in the RTFX Generator to add it into our composition. Let's come to the point of impact. There's the explosion. Starting a little bit early. I kind of want it happening right there's when I want it appearing. I'm also going to move it over me and scale it down maybe just a little bit. And again, let's set the blend mode from normal over to screen. You can also change it to additive if you want some more energy, but you can see the impact happening right there. Yeah, that's looking pretty cool. I kind of like that effect. And if that's all you want, you can kind of get away with it, but I kind of want to add a few extra elements, a few extra explosions like sparks and other pieces kind of flying off, especially around my head and my shoulders, which is kind of poking out over the top or at the bottom. You could also just duplicate this explosion if you wanted to. By the way, let me just rename this one to explosion. It'll just make a little bit more sense. But I'm just going to add a few other elements, just like energy, impact-y style elements to give this a little bit more zing. For that, again, you could come into the energy category and pull like a whole bunch of these ones out and add them into the explosion effect itself. But I'm actually going to come down and come into the sparks category because I know there's a whole bunch of really cool effects in here that I can use. Oh, I'm liking these ones. They're actually kind of cool. So maybe I'll add this one for my upper body. So maybe not at the first impact. Maybe at this point, I want that element or this explosion element to appear on my upper body just to kind of add a bit to it. So again, double click the element in the RTFX generator to add it into our composition. Cool, there it is. Again, let's just move this over a little bit, change the mode over to screen. I'm going to make this a bit smaller, just maybe right about there. Come back a little bit. Starting a little bit too early. I kind of want it to happen maybe 1 or 2 frames after the main impact. So maybe from right about, yep, that actually looks kind of cool. So I'm kind of liking that. And let's also add a few things for the legs. Yeah, maybe that going down the legs as this impact happens, because I imagine that this integration happening from this point forward. So I'm going to disintegrate in this direction upwards and downwards. So maybe this looks kind of nice, just sliding down my legs. So again, double click the element to add it to our project. Let's come back. And there's the element again, mode to screen. Size was almost good. I'm just going to scale it down a little bit, move it over, and again, maybe 1 or 2 frames in so it doesn't happen immediately. Maybe about the same time there. And again, just position it where you need it to. So it's kind of zapping down the leg to disintegrate. Cool, that's looking quite nice. And let's just keep adding some elements. Like this one looks really cool, so maybe I'll add that to the back. Again, just double click and add it into the project. Come back a little bit, mode to screen. And again, feel free to add as many elements as you want to, tweak them in any way you want, scale them, rotate them, place them in any way that you want to kind of make this impact look nice and powerful. And I'd recommend just offset a few of them like by a few frames, just so they don't all happen at the exact same time. It'll just add a little bit to it. And yeah, maybe I'll add this one as well. Come back again, mode to screen. And I'm really just repeating this process here. And the RTFX generator contains a ton of elements that you can add. They all look really nice. You just kind of need to tweak it and customize and make it your own. But feel free to play around with this. There's no real set rules of which effects you need to use to make this work. It's really just up to taste. Let's just check this out. Cool, that's looking really nice already. Maybe the last thing I'll do, I'll just add something for the feet. And yeah, this one's it's looking really cool, but I think I'm gonna go with this rather simple one here. So let's just add that in as well. Again, come back, change the mode over to screen, scale that in a little bit and move it down. Move it 1 frame over as well to kind of have that happen maybe at this point. So that's kind of how I'll disappear. So let's rewind, play this back. Cool, I think that element-wise looks pretty good. Next, we'll actually have to make myself disappear because right now I'm still in the shot, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Let me make the timeline a little bit bigger. And well, we have quite a few different elements in here already. And let me just rename all of these impact elements just very quickly. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to press F4 to reveal my layer switches. I'm going to enable this little shy flag here on all of the effect layers, on all of the ones that I've pulled in from the RTFX generator, and then enable the hide shy layers flag in my composition just to clean this up, just so we don't have to worry about some of these effects right now, because we really just want to deal with me disappearing. For that, what I'm going to do is first off, I do want to clean up this mask on this Tobias hit layer. You can see this really ugly cut line right there. So let's select the Tobias hit layer, press M, reveal that mask. I'm just going to select and delete it just because I think it's not done very well. It was just more so we can see what's going on. grab the pen tool this time, and I kind of want to draw a mask because I still need me in the shot, but I kind of want to follow some of the natural lines here in the back of the garage, just so it's not like a straight cut down. It'll just look a bit more natural that way. So I'm going to draw a mask now here down the pillar of the garage and kind of along this sheet. And again, you can kind of do this in any way you want. So maybe like this, give it a little bit space on the bottom, and just kind of draw the mask around. Next, let's expand the mask properties, give it a bit of feathering, like maybe 50 to 100. We do want this to be a fairly soft mask, so it looks a bit more natural. Also, let's make sure that throughout the whole shot, I never really get any closer than that. Like I never step across the boundary, but I think, yep, I'm stopping just short of it. So that's looking pretty good. And then I get shot in the face. And now here I do need to disappear. And you can kind of animate this mask to pull in, but I much prefer to add a layer on top to hide me because I don't want the edge of this mask to animate in, because you're going to see a little bit of a color shift there because of the way the two clips worked. So what I much prefer to do, let's duplicate this Tobias hit layer. Let's rename this layer to clean plate. Press M to reveal the mask. Let's delete that mask from it. Enable the solo switch on the clean plate. I'm actually also going to enable the solo switch on the Tobias hit and Walter Hadouken layer. So we're not going to see the actual visual effects on top. We're only going to see these three layers while we're working with it. Let's come to the beginning where I'm not in the shot. Let's right click our clean plate, come to time and freeze that frame. So this is literally just the very first frame of our animation. So this is literally just a clean plate, an empty shot with none of the actors in it. And if you hide the visibility, you can see that's just hiding everything underneath it. Now, with that disabled, let's come to the point where I need to disappear. So right about here, let's just unsolo those layers so we can see the actual effects. So right at this point is where I need to start disappearing. So I'm going to trim this clean plate layer in to start at that point, enable the visibility. And it's still hiding everything, which is not what we want. We actually want this to hide only me. And what we also don't want, we actually want to leave this plastic bag floating. So I just want to erase myself from this clip, from this point forward, and leave this plastic bag kind of floating in the air, because it'll give more, it just adds to the illusion of me disappearing and me having been in that shot. So for that, what we're going to do is from this point forward, let's just add and animate a mask around me. So the clean plate really just affects me. It just covers me up from this point forward. Let's grab the pen tool with the clean plate layer selected. From the point where the impact is happening, let's draw a mask kind of just around. I want to erase my hand as well. Kind of come down, and my feet or my shoes as well. Come all the way around to the right hand side. Just like that. Let's enable the visibility on the clean plate, and you can see it's just erasing me from the shot. Let's expand the mask properties, give it a little bit of feathering, because otherwise you can see that edge a fair bit, and you will still see a little bit of a color shift, but because this big explosion effect is going to happen right in the middle, that's where the viewers will look and they won't really notice too much. We just adjust this mask here because I don't want my fingers to be in the shot anymore. And this can be a little bit unclean. Again, nobody is going to notice. In visual effects, you can often fudge a few things as long as there's something really big and important happening that everyone is looking at. Then, let me just make the timeline a little bit bigger. Click on the stopwatch icon next to the mask path for this mask so we can enable keyframes and animate it. And let's just start moving forward a little bit. What I might do is I might actually lower the opacity temporarily just a little bit so I can actually see what is going on. And I just want to move forward a little bit and then animate this mask to kind of pull in as I'm pulling away. I don't want the plastic bag to be masked out anymore, so I'm going to animate this to kind of, I want to raise my hand still, but then I want the mask to kind of pull in. And now at this point here, I also need to make sure that I don't cover up the plastic bag. So I'm going to pull this mask in. So you can see the mask is essentially just erasing me. It's just kind of cutting me out of that clip. Let's increase the opacity for the clean plate again, so I can literally get fully erased. Maybe I'll solo these three layers again, so we're hiding all of the visual effects, just to check out what that looks like. Yep, so that's kind of the effect. Now, the only other thing is that right now I'm disappearing in one go. So if I unsolo my layers, you can see that the moment that Hadouken hits me, I'm disintegrated fully already, and I kind of want that disintegration to happen from the center outwards. And there are many different ways to do this. You can add another mask and animate that to sweep out, but again, we can use one of the cool elements from the RTFX Generator. So let's come to the point of impact. Again, let me solo my 3 layers, and I'm just clicking and dragging down. Let's come into the RTFX Generator, collapse the FX elements, open up the transitions, come down, let's select matte, and in here you have all of these cool matte transitions. It's just black and white. Oh, this one looks kind of cool. Maybe I'll go with this one actually. And again, just double click to add it into our composition. And you'll notice that you can't actually see the matte, and the matte layers itself is actually invisible because by adding this into our shot, because it is a matte, if I press F4 to reveal my blend modes, well, that didn't quite work. So let's unsolo all of these layers, unhide our hidden layers as well, because yeah, it edited all the way on the top. So it actually changed the track matte on my top layer, this impact element, to alpha inverted. I'm going to change that to no track matte. Grab this matte. I'm also going to rename it to matte, drag that down onto my clean plate because I want this matte here. Let's enable the visibility. I want this white matte to control where my layer disappears, where Tobias disappears. For that, again, let's just solo all of these layers, so that's all we'll see. I'm going to grab this matte layer, drag it over to the right-hand side. Let's come to the beginning. Let me just lower the opacity temporarily so we can see what's going on. So, okay, so there the matte is kicking in. I want this point in time to kind of start the disintegration. So I'm going to zoom in at that point with the matte layer selected, press Alt and left square bracket to trim that in. I'm going to bring that forward to the point where the impact happens, which is right here. Bring that over to the left-hand side. So this is kind of where this matte layer now kicks in. Let me move this over to the right-hand side a little bit, because that's kind of where my gut is, right? This is where the impact, and then this shape, this outward moving shape, is going to be what erases me. So that actually looks quite good. Let's bring the opacity back to 100. And now on this clean plate layer, let's change the track matte from none over to alpha inverted. If you now rewind, what's going to happen is that essentially this layer is going to disintegrate in the shape of this track matte. So you can see this being eaten away from the center out. And while it's not perfect, it's a much nicer effect. It looks a little bit more like I'm disintegrating from where that Hadouken hits me, and it's going to align a lot better with all of the explosion elements as well. The other thing I might do is on this matte, press U to reveal all of the keyframes. And you can see this is the start and the end of this animation. I'm going to bring the end in a little bit. I kind of want this disintegration to happen a little bit quicker, maybe within like 3 or 4 frames. I kind of want to be disintegrated. Also, it's pretty sharp, like the edges of this animation of this track matte are pretty sharp. So let's come to the Effects and Presets panel. Let's search for the Fast Box Blur effect. Grab that and drop that onto the matte layer. In the effect controls, I'm going to bring the blur radius up to maybe 4, maybe down to 2. Just add a little bit of blurriness so it's a little bit softer. Let's rewind and play this back. Cool. Can you see how the clean plate essentially gets revealed by this track matte that we added, which then kind of erases me from the shot? A little bit more like a disintegration. And now if we unsolo these layers, so we get all of our explosions, overlaying that again, you'll see this works a whole lot better. You can see I'm being erased by this effect. So let's rewind, zoom out a little bit, and play this back. Cool, and that is actually looking really nice. Now, the next thing I personally like to do is add a little bit more glow, especially to this impact and all of these elements, just so it feels a bit more impactful. For that, I'm going to select the explosion and all of the impact elements, Ctrl, Shift, and C to pre-compose that. Let's call this Explosion Comp. If you're on a later version of After Effects, I personally also like to select to adjust the composition duration, because it just looks a bit cleaner on my timeline. Hit OK. So that's now all of my pre-composed elements. And you can see that the blend mode has changed back to normal. You can change the blend mode here. That will affect all of the elements in this composition, or press F4 to reveal your layer switches, then enable this little gear icon to collapse transformations. And that's going to retain all of the blend modes of the layers within this composition. So there they are. It's looking nice again. Let's just add a glow effect to this. For that, in the Effects and Presets panel, let's simply search for a glow. Come to the bottom. I'm just going to use the very basic stylized glow. I've got some nicer effects, but this one will do. Let's just apply that to the layer, and that looks a little bit funky. I'm actually going to change the blend mode of this layer from normal over to screen, because I want the glow itself to be screen blended as well. Let's just check out the radius a fair bit. I kind of want a really wide glow. I'm also going to jack the threshold up because I just want the really colorful, the really intense parts to glow to maybe 95%. Radius probably around the 700 or 800. So this is just going to add like a really wide, intense glow to this effect. It makes it seem like there's light in the garage. Obviously, it's not fully realistic. You can jack the intensity up a little bit as well. It just adds a little bit of intensity to the final effect. Let's rewind and play this back. Cool, that's looking pretty good. The last thing is to add a little bit of camera shake to just make this feel a little bit more intense. And I'm not going to go through the details of this. I'm going to link you a tutorial for how to create camera shake down in the video description. So I'm going to go through this really quickly. If you're getting confused, just check out the link down in the video description to a separate tutorial. I'm just going to select all of my layers and pre-compose them. Call this Hadouken Comp. Hit OK. Let's come back to where the impact happens, right about there. Let's apply a slider control effect to this layer. Enable the keyframes, set this one to maybe 10, step 1 keyframe back, set this to 0, and then maybe 20 or so forward, set this back to 0. So we're essentially just animating a little slider control to go from 0 to 10 and back down. With the layer selected, press P, Alt, and click onto the stopwatch icon to add a little expression. I'm going to add a wiggle expression, 24, comma, and let's just grab this slider and insert that right there. So we're going to control the movement of the frame by the value of that slider in order to get rid of that black border. Let's apply a motion tile effect, set the output to 150 width and height, and enable mirror edges. So we're just kind of filling in that little black blank. Finally, let's enable motion blur on the layer. Make sure it's enabled on the composition as well. Collapse that. I might also go to the composition settings, and on this one, set the shutter angle back to 180. So I'm getting a little bit more motion blur happening. And with that, let's make a little bit of space so we can enjoy a nice big preview. Rewind, and let's play back the final Hadouken effect. And that's all there is to it. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit that like button. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. And if you want to watch more, just click these links over on the right hand side. If you want to support me, what I do on this channel, be sure to check out all of the links down in the video description. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I will see you later.